Should I leave this here or bring it or?
Should be fine. We can eyeball it.
Alright.
Alright. So we put on the website, we put on the form, but we began recording like consultations and training sessions. It's just to put more information out there. And then because of COVID, we're not touching the dogs anymore, so all verbal instructions and ton of information. So for the owners, they can always go back to their own video. But then also like for potential clients, if they're like, does this verbal instruction work? And I go, just watch our videos. Sure. There's the proof right there, okay? So I read real quick, it seems like overly friendly, like just to like tame behavior down a bit.
All the time.
Yeah.
Very excited.
Sure. And how old is he?
He just turned 1.
Turned 1, okay. Alright. Good size. Nice kind of medium size.
Yep.
And you had him on the harness prior?
Yeah.
Okay, it was like a front clip harness or?
Yeah, front clip.
Front clip, okay.
Yeah, my boyfriend doesn't use the harness, but I do because he's control him.
Okay. Yeah, with the front clip, what happens is it diverts his pressure of power because with his chest and the things, as he pushes forward and pulls back.
Yeah.
So with the front clip, what happens is it just diverts that power to the side of it. It's kind of like a band-aid, you know, in the meantime until you get formal training.
Yeah.
Anything else about Brody here?
No, not really. He's just, I mean, he's very, very friendly. He just definitely needs to be trained.
Sure.
Get to a potty, what do you think? He wants to be like running all the time. And he jumps up when he greets you.
Sure. Yeah, it's just pretty typical. I saw like, was it something like 50% or something, golden retriever, lab.
Yeah, and
then
Beagle.
Okay. Is he neutered already?
Yeah.
Looks like it, yeah. Cats didn't learn to pick up the leg.
No, he did it.
That's fine. That was Cameron, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll wait for Cameron to pop up and before he was in the socket.
Really fast.
You had this guy since he was a pup?
Yeah, we got him in about 8 weeks.
Has he had any other training before?
We went to Petco for like a puppy, little puppy training.
Yeah. Potty training, clicker training.
Yeah. Yeah, he's good potty trained. You know, he's very food driven, so if you have food, he'll sit and be calm, but otherwise.
Otherwise, we got a couple cars coming. And then before reaching out, I'm assuming you did research on us?
Yeah.
Okay. So you know how we train our methods and all this?
Yeah.
Collar, prong collar?
Yep.
Okay. Did you research any of that? Like just let's really themselves?
So we were looking into a prong collar. Cameron's mom has a golden Bernedoodle.
Okay.
And they use a prong collar.
Golden
it really
Bernedoodle?
works. Something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, some of those doodles. Yeah.
Yeah, a doodle. A huge doodle. It's like this big.
Yeah.
And they use a prong collar and it really works. So we were looking. And I think that's really what he needs because he's very good. He just like wants to just be.
Yeah, well, he's very much in his own world.
Yeah.
You know, like he's kind of standing still here, but like in the earlier,
Yeah.
like all pulling stuff.
For sure.
Um,
And he's worse for me than he is for me.
Gotcha.
Don't worry, let's go.
Anything else other than like the obedience stuff?
Not really, no. I guess like he always wants to be entertained.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Like
He'll
he
bark
like
at you.
he can't just like hang out by himself.
Sure.
If I'm working from home, he'll like bark at me or like come up and like try to like nip me and play.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that, which is all tied to this.
Yeah.
That just kind of excited energy. Not having an conflict.
Yeah.
Hi. How you doing? Nice to meet you, Jesse. This is Enrique. So we were just catching up on Brody, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just catching up on Brody. Just like the obedience stuff, the energy, a little excitement, the frustrated barking, as you were just noting right now.
Yeah.
And then you guys were talking about prong collar because a relative using the prong collar on a golden barking or anything like that, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. So anything else about Brody or like in general, you guys know?
He's good. He's just has a lot of energy.
Sure. Very food driven. Okay. Very good dog if you have to treat it. Sure. Poor dog. What about outside?
He's good on walking. Yeah.
Okay.
It's an attention grabber for him. It doesn't matter what else he's doing.
Oh yeah, six. He loves six. Oh, he'll eat anything. He eats. Like, if you leave something out for like 2 minutes, he drinks.
That can also be tied to this energy here.
Yeah.
So what I'm seeing, and this is super common, is a lot of overstimulation, which is just excited energy, which is where the frustrated barking comes from, like when you're working at home. Here, it's just kind of being all over the place, and then like grabbing and redirecting sticks. If you leave something out and just wanting to chew it, it's because all that stimulation has to go somewhere. And typically for dogs, they release things through their mouth. So like for humans, we pace, we cry, we chew on their nails. Like we have all these things that we do to kind of release emotions. For dogs, it's usually mouth-driven: barking, panting, licking, chewing, biting, eating. Like anything mouth-related is how they usually, or anything emotion-related, they usually go through the mouth. So all that stuff should actually go away with formal training, more so because of the discipline factor. And when it comes to obedience, I want you to look at it as obedience as education. So like sit, stay, come, math, English, science, and then the behavioral stuff like don't jump, don't bark, don't bite, don't steal, don't cheat. Okay. That's how they. So like a really smart person can be like a terrible person, and someone who's not the smartest could be a really good person, right? Like they don't correlate. Same thing for dogs, but there's a gray area. So like food, I'm not against using food and positive reinforcement for training. It's great. It's great for puppies under 6 months. But what happens is if you get a dog that's really overstimulated a lot, it doesn't help with stimulation. Okay. If anything, it creates more stimulation because dogs go into food drive and then they get more excited. Or in most cases, realistically speaking, let's say like, does he have any prey drive like squirrels, rabbits, or anything like that? No. Okay. So that makes life easier. But if I have a dog that's like really prey driven, and sees birds. Let's say they like chase after a squirrel and they're using food to train the dog. The squirrel is going to be more rewarding than the food because that's something that the dog doesn't get to do all the time, right? So they'll blow off the food and they'll continue chasing the squirrel and only stuck with not having the means to get the dog in return. Okay, so that's where aversives come into play. Prong collar is an aversive tool. It's got the spiky look or whatever. It's meant to mimic a dog bite. That's where that came from. Because dogs bite each other to set boundaries and rules.
Are you not fully against it? The lady Pecco knows.
Oh yeah, that's how I train.
The lady Pecco
Yeah.
looked on it.
Yeah, because it's like if why even sell it?
Yeah.
It's like why even sell it? Like it's stupid. So the reason why, so like typically Petco is actually like it depends on who's there. So I used to work for PetSmart years and years ago, and they were the same way. It was completely anti-aversives, food only, which I get for that stuff, whatever. It's super simple stuff. But it had a very low ceiling. When I used to teach, like nobody would, like people would give up so quickly because they're like, this doesn't work. Right? Almost always, this doesn't work. Yeah. So, and then, then you go to get a prong collar or something, and kids all the other spiel. I get it. Okay. So yes, I use prong collars and e-collars, but I don't use prong as much anymore because, and I'll explain why. One, for prong collar, in some cases, there's more physicality involved with it because you have to do correction. You have to be doing that biting motion. Okay? So like, let's say he's really stimulated for something, and Cameron has the strength and capacity to correct him firm enough that he'll listen to Cameron, but then for you, if you don't have that same level of skill or strength, you may not listen to you. So that's when you're going to hit a draw. Okay? So, prong is effective, I love them, but that discrepancy is something that's not uncommon. Okay? So, that's why I use e-collars. All my dogs, after 6 months, are trained on e-collars. It's very effective, it's super efficient, and super easy to learn. Okay? E-collar is, have you ever been to a physical therapist or a chiropractor? No? So have you ever seen those videos where they recreate labor contraction?
Oh yeah.
Men?
Like,
Yeah. Okay, so that's what's called a TENS unit. So at a chiropractor or physical therapist, they would put these little circles on you, and they would move your muscle, and it's for muscle rehabilitation. It's for breaking up scar tissue. So like if you've injured your arm and not used it for a long time, they'll do that to build the strength back. If you have back pain, you can even go to Walgreens and you go to the back section and you'll see what's called a TENS unit, TENS, and it looks like a little bone, and you put it on your back and it moves the muscles, okay? So if there's a slight electric current that stimulates the muscles to get them to move to alleviate pain, okay? That's an e-collar, okay? People typically think of e-collar as like a taser or like sticking your finger in an outlet, electrocution. That's not what it is at all. It's the same technology as the TENS unit, okay? So the labor contraction pain videos is the same technology, but they're using it at a very high intensity because they're trying to recreate labor contraction, right? So it's supposed to be uncomfortable. So it's the same thing with the e-collar. It has varying levels. The ones that we use have 127 levels. So like cheaper ones have 10 levels. So 10 and 127 are like theoretically the same, but I have 117 more breaks. So it's more nuanced, okay? So the reason why I tell people just go with this tool is because right off the bat you get off leash control. Okay, you don't have to worry about, is my dog going to run away and I can't get this back. For prong collar, when we have the discrepancy of the strength factor, but the other thing is that, let's say you take him off leash and he's running around and something gets his attention and he books it, because you don't have physical connection with them, you're not going to be able to get the return. Okay, so there's that drawback there. Okay, e-collar, I don't worry about that. It's super easy to teach. It's very simple. Now because of COVID, we've been doing verbal instruction, and we do verbal instruction here. As you can see, and this isn't as busy as it can get. Oz Park gets very busy, okay? Is most places you're training in a confined environment, bland environment, not very realistic, and then when you go home, it's hard to translate, right? We're training here, and you're getting the results here. So then I'm like, if you can get it here,
Best or the worst case.
worst case, right? I'm like, if you can get it here, anywhere else is easy peasy, okay? So we train for the real world. We don't do, bland environment type stuff. And now, because of COVID, like I said, it's verbal instruction. E-collar allows me to teach you without having to touch your dog. Okay? And I prefer this, and a lot of my clients are loving it because everything is tied to them. So pre-COVID, I would take Brody, I would work with him so you could see, I'd give him back to you, and then I would coach you. But I would do a lot of the hard work because I would do the first half when the dog didn't know anything. Now you're doing everything from beginning to end. Okay, so nothing's associated to me. You're learning how to use your collar and that skill set, so that in a realistic context, you're going to know what to do in order to get Brody to return. Okay, so when it comes to like this behavior stuff, like the stimulation, it's because he's had no formal discipline. Okay, so like earlier I said, obedience and behavior don't really overlap depending on how you approach it. If you're doing treats only, positive reinforcement is great for stuff you want to see again, but when you go in a realistic environment, you tend to lose the focus. Okay? It doesn't transfer. And then with e-collar, because it's negative, people don't, or anyone doesn't want to be in an uncomfortable situation. If you're uncomfortable, you think to yourself, how do I stop this? How do I get myself out of this situation? Dogs are the same way. So think of that e-collar as uncomfortable. Okay, look at the prong collar. Prong collar, when you pull on it, it's pressure, so like the teeth, that's uncomfortable. So then you would shape behaviors using that discomfort so that Brody learns, oh, when I do this, this goes away. Okay, but then after, like if you brought him here with the prong collar, and we actually had a case, it was what was Smokey? Golden Doodle?
Yeah.
It was black, right?
Yeah.
We had a black Golden Doodle puppy. He was 6 months. Yeah, they're getting really popular. Yeah, they're getting super popular. So we were training here, and they wanted to do prong collar because they felt really bad about the e-collar. And then we did all those normal stuff, and then by the second or third week, you have to apply corrections, and they're like yanking the dog super hard, right? But he didn't care. This was too distracting for him, so it wasn't realistic. So I told them, because I trained their son's dogs, I was like, just do e-collar, it's going to make a world of a difference. And then they said, okay, they went to e-collar, and all of a sudden, it was very easy to work with the dog. Okay, so it's really the connotation that people have of what the e-collar is. They think we come in and just make them yelp. It's not how it works. Okay, what we use is what a concept called pressure on. Pressure on when we need the dog to do something. Pressure off once they comply. Okay, you guys drive? You've been on the expressway? You ever been like on the far left lane and like someone will come really close to your bumper, and then you might switch lanes? You might speed up. You might not do anything, or you might hit the brakes, like brake checking, right? That's pressure. That's facial pressure. So they're getting really close to you, and they're making you feel uncomfortable that it gets some kind of response. It may not be the response that they want, but it's some kind of response, right? So it's the same thing with e-collar or prong collar. It's pressure, it's just a different form of pressure, the way it's being delivered, okay? It's visibly. So if you were to go to a chiropractor or a physical therapist and have that tension placed on you, they start low and they say, tell us when it becomes too much. And they work their way up. And then you say, oh, that's too much. And they'll say, oh, that's 10. We're going to go to 9. And they go, how does that feel? You go, I can deal with 9. And you go, okay, we're going to leave you alone for a bit and let that machine do its work. It's like break up scar tissue, whatever it is, okay? But they need a number that you can tolerate so that you can let that happen, right? For dogs, it's very similar. We start low, we work our way up. I don't know what Brody's number is going to be. It could be stupid low, it could be stupid high, or it could be right in the middle. Most dogs tend to fall between the 15 to 35 range out of 127. But we do, like I have a handful of cases right now. Coincidentally, all of them pitties. Their numbers are like 85, 95. Okay? But they're super resilient. That's why their number's so high. Okay? So that's what makes e-collar so effective. Everybody has a breaking point. Everybody has a number that's like, okay, this is too much. It's just, what is that number going to be for your particular dog? Okay. Once we find, so we have 3 levels that we call. We have perception, so we have connection, perception, and working. And I'll send you videos on this. Connection is just for the switch. Okay, so you see like right now with this guy, how he's looking at everything? So if I'm Brody, right, I'm distracted, you'll see this happening, but he does not care. He's just like this. That's connection. But there's nothing going on here. And then we get perception where he'll feel the twitch and he'll kind of just like look around, but he's like not really fazed by it. And then working is twitch and whoa, what was that? Okay, it's a concerning number. And we always want to find that working level because that's what makes us or makes our training so effective off the bat. It's because we're finding a number that's more concerning than the environment. Okay. Once we have that, then we start teaching. Okay. I don't know what his level's going to be. He knows. Personality type or anything like that does not matter. It's just how does the dog perceive physicality. Okay. I've had puppies be very high on the collar. I've had dogs be super anxious and nervous and seemingly like very insecure, be super resilient to the collar. So it's nothing good or bad. It's just you have to be able to like put that aside since we're logical. A lot of my clients are like, man, that's 95 out of 127. It's so high. Like they feel bad because it's so much, pressure. But I'm like, but look at your dog. Your dog's not yelping. Your dog's not crying. Your dog is listening. That's the appropriate number for your dog in this environment. But because we're logical and they're thinking of math and all that stuff, they're thinking, wow, this must be really hurting. And then they struggle with that component. That's like the most common thing we see is emotionally for the owner, they feel bad. But I tell them, dogs fight each other. That's how they communicate. They're physical animals. So we're just using physicality back to teach them, but he dictates what the number is. If I can get it at 12, then it's 12. If I have to be at 112, then it's 112. But I'm gonna get that control one way or another. Yeah. Questions so far about any of this?
I don't think so.
How big's the collar?
The box. We don't have one in the backpack, right? The box itself is like probably like that big.
More like the citronella.
Yeah, it's like a bark collar.
Oh, like the citronella? Yeah, very much the same. Okay, same size. And then you control the remote. Okay, so he doesn't feel anything unless you're actively pressing the button. In terms of like control, if you could have the life you wanted with Brody and you had him trained to what you needed, what would that look like?
I mean, the biggest thing is the greeting people, right? So jumping as soon as people get there.
And then
Sure.
pulling when they're standing.
Yeah, sure.
Not being distracted. The constant need for stimulation.
The biggest thing is he gets to about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You have to be doing something with him,
Yeah.
or else he's going to start to get in trouble.
Sure.
Which may be quite
Go for a run in the morning, and then a midday walk, and then nighttime walk, like long walks. And then we just take him out throughout the day. So
Jesus.
yeah. He does get a lot, yeah.
Now,
That's more for like my exercise.
I'll say that's fine. If it's for you, I have no problem with it.
Yeah.
But I had a client that used to walk their dog 2 hours a day and run them on a treadmill an hour a day, so it's 3 hours of work, and the dog was still crazy.
So it's not always a lack of exercise that makes you
That's lack of discipline. Formal discipline. Okay, dog discipline. Because another dog, if we annoyed another dog with his energy, they'd bite him.
Yes.
And they'd say, cut the crap. You know, like for me growing up, if I got too loud, I just got spanked. Cut the crap, right? But because the most popular opinion in the dog training world is everything's positive and treats and stuff, it's not realistic. And that's why, yes,
everything you
can
read is
discipline your dog.
do not discipline. Just make sure they know what's correct, not that they know what's wrong.
So there's no right or wrong in the dog world. There's only right and wrong in the human world. Dogs go by what can I do and what can't I do, and you dictate that. Okay. So it was funny because I have a friend of mine who helps on certain days with filming stuff, and he's not a dog person, never had a dog or any of that stuff, right? But his roommate wanted to get a dog, and he's like, "We better get it trained." And then he's like, "Oh, but I don't want to discipline a dog, whatever." He's like, "Look, if you're paying for the bills, you're paying for this, you're paying for the vet, and all that stuff." He's like, "You can be mean to it a little bit." I started laughing. I'm like,
and also, I mean, like, I don't know how we've spent like thousands of dollars getting the stomach pumped because
"Jeez,
gloves, socks.
crazy!" And that's
little.
life. Right. Like if it gets clogged and they remove it, it's done.
That's
No
where
We
more.
have to get him. He's like a frequent flyer card.
Jesus.
Getting
Hope you're using those
stomach pumped.
rewards cards.
Yeah.
All right. So, yes, you can discipline him. You're supposed to discipline him because his mom would discipline him. Okay. Mother dogs discipline their puppies very young. Okay. But people, when they get them at 2 months or whatever, everything's saying you can't.
Yeah.
You absolutely can. Okay. Now I do tell people you can't be screaming and yelling at your dog because that's not discipline. They don't understand that concept. Dogs are physical, So yes, you can physically correct a puppy even at 2 months. Right? It's just the predominant thought process out there is be nice and not crap. Don't worry about it. Okay, I'll give you all the answers as long as you're open-minded and you're like we'll follow through. There's answers. This is for me simple stuff. Okay, so any other questions or concerns?
I think so.
Nope. Okay. So the way I'd approach the case, so the 3 things you noted are actually all behavioral stuff. Okay. Control-wise, because that's obedience, definitely the heel. Okay. The leash walking, we don't want any pulling. Recall is another very common one, common called.
Yep.
Just in case something happens, or if he's chasing something, or someone likes fireworks and gets spooked, you want to make sure your dog comes back.
Yep.
If you could go with him to a restaurant patio and have him lay down in that roof for a while, would you like that level of control?
For sure.
Okay. Are you guys very active? Like, do you go hiking, or is it like we walk, go to a dog park, eat at a restaurant? type
Dog
of
park,
thing?
restaurants.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Bring them to friends' houses and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Okay. Nice. So there's different ways of going about this in terms of because you mentioned they're not jumping. Okay. So most trainers go about teach your dog to sit. If your dog is sitting, your dog can jump on people. Okay.
Give them that a try.
Or you just teach them not to jump on people.
Yeah.
Okay. So the way that looks is, I don't care what he does when he greets someone. I just don't want him to jump. And
Yeah. That's how we are too.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't care if he runs around in a circle or does
goes to
whatever.
your legs or whatever, right? I just need him to keep those paws on the ground, right?
Yeah.
So then you just correct the jumping. The sitting for the greeting is an extra step. I'm not against it, but in the beginning when someone's struggling with something, just correct it, right? And then we'll worry about the afterwards, because you could knock someone down and all that stuff. So if you jump on the wrong dog, again, bite him, and then he'll learn I don't jump on you. Okay, it's the same thing with people. You just correct them. Okay, so behaviorally, the frustration of getting bored at 3 o'clock, like you noted earlier, and just the stimulation here, the leash walking exercise should resolve those issues. If it doesn't, no, not a problem. We'll just go about it differently. The jumping on people is different. Okay, that's a new context, especially if they're like, oh my god, Brody, right?
Yeah.
Then you have to correct them and teach them it doesn't matter what their energy is, you still can't jump on them.
Yep.
Okay, correcting behaviors is simple. So if I didn't do my homework, if I talk back to my mom, or if I didn't clean my room, spank, spank, spank. How it was. Okay? One consequence for a multitude of behaviors. And then that consequence changed as they got older and outgrew spanking, whatever. But for dogs, they never really outgrow the physicality part of it. It just, they always bite each other. It's just how intense does the bite need to be. Okay? And dogs will bite to punctures, clearly, right? So that's the animal world. So when I come in, what makes me a very effective trainer is earlier I said this number could be 12, it could be 112. I don't have any reservations. I go, what do I need to do to get you to behave? Okay, and that's why I'm so successful because I don't have limitations. Most people, when they pitch e-collar, will tell you like, oh, we do low levels of collar, and it's like stupid low. It's like 4 to 5, and I very rarely get a dog that will be responsive to that low of a number. Most of my cases, like I said, are 15 to 35 range, and then we have those outliers that are like 85, 95. But it's all different for every dog. Okay, so as long as you're okay with that, then all the other stuff is pretty easy peasy.
Yeah.
So, in terms of length of time and stuff, that just that's dictated by how much control you want, right? That's why I asked like the life of like if you could have life with Brody and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So typically it's 2 classes for leash walking, healing exercise. My style of heel is if I take 1 step, you take 1 step, I take 5 steps, you take 5 steps, when I stop, you automatically sit. This is the completely slack leash in this kind of environment. I don't care what's going on. I don't care what's walking by. Dogs, people, scooters, rollerbladers, all that stuff. He's here. I want that level of discipline. Okay.
Yeah.
That's typically 2 classes. The next thing we want to work on is recall, which is recall stuff. That's another 2 classes. Okay. Behaviorally, like the jumping and stuff, that's a super simple concept. I would just tell you like, you're going to do this. When he does this, you're going to apply consequence. You're going to figure out what the number is, and anytime he does it, you just simply apply consequence. If he respects that consequence, that should deter the behavior. That's what a burst is for. You guys ever touch a hot stove? Would you do it again? Right? That's a consequence, right? It's the same thing for dogs. You're just trying to find what consequence is going to deter them, not only from doing it at that moment, but doing it again in the future. Okay. Now, dog logic and human logic is very different. Just let you know that. So, like, I've had clients, their dogs counter surf, and the dog will go and they'll blast that 127 to stop the behavior, and their dog will keep doing it. And they'll say, Jesse, what the hell is wrong with my dog? I hit him on 127, and he's still counter surfing. I'm like, because the act of actually doing it is worth the 127. So then I tell him you have to apply a firm consequence even prior, like the moment the dog acknowledges, that's what you the higher consequence if the first approach is right. Now we wouldn't do this with jumping because I'm not trying to make it spooky with people, but you have to find that magic number that not just stops it. Because let's say 20 gets Brody to remove his paws, and he stops in that moment, but every single time you have to remote him at 20. He's not getting better, right? Then I start to play with numbers, 25, 30, 35, 40. Maybe it's 45, and you tap him, and then he meets 20 other people, and he doesn't jump on them. Then 45 not only stopped it, but like resonated, where he's like, oh, I don't want to jump on other people either. Does that make sense?
Enough to not want to do it.
Correct, right? And then we repeat that process because, like as humans, like I follow, I would say, traffic laws and stuff, but I slip up. And I might run a red light. Yep. Then I get the ticket. And I go, damn it! Now I have to pay attention to red light. You know, like so it's kind of like it's not going to be perfect dog, but it's going to be you have to do very little to, I would say, keep them in check over the course of time. Like my dogs, I still correct. It's like they have a learning capacity of a 3 to 4 year old child. So you don't teach a 3 to 4 year old child a concept and then retain it forever. Like you're having to address it, but that time frame in between should become greater. And also, humans do mature. Obviously, you know, we grow up to adults. He is forever a 3 to 4 year old child. So just keep that in mind, okay? So, so yeah, it'll be 2 classes on the heel, 2 classes on the recall. Behavior stuff is easy. I'm not worried about any of that. If all that's going really well, then we can even cover the stationary control, like in the pace command or what have you, of don't move for the next 2 to 3 hours while we're eating brunch. And then you train as you go about your life equipment. The only command really that you have to set time for to teach is the recall, and it's the one that does take people the longest because unless you live conveniently in front of a park, you have to get in your car, drive somewhere, practice with them, you know, and then your training is only as good as the environment you work in. So like if it's a very like bland open field, he'll be great there, but then when you come here, it's not going to be not so great. Okay, so recall will take longer, but I give you the tools to get off-leash reliability. Okay, and then if you're fine with that, which you cover in those the six classes and stuff, then we're all good. Thank you for the opportunity. Otherwise, there's more stuff to teach, but I simplify things. I know what your issues are. I've done this kind of dog, Lord knows how many times. And then if you're wanting more of the formal, like sit down, stay, like more, complete control, then that's a longer program. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Question?
I guess when you're talking the sit and stay, that's the obedience side of it, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now with that, is that without treats and whatnot?
Correct. You'd be using the e-collar.
Okay. So it's still with.
Correct. Yeah. All this is done through remote collar. Now the most common question I do get is when does the e-collar go away?
Time frame wise on that.
Yes.
And if it doesn't.
So in my opinion, and in my book, it does not when you need it. So you guys go on the expressway driving? You go the speed limit? I know. Do the other people on the expressway go the speed limit on occasion? Yeah, but most people probably speed, right? Yeah. So it's opportunistic behavior. The reason why we speed is because there's no squad cars. If you see a squad car, I would assume you slow down. Right? You don't want to get a ticket. That's opportunistic behavior. Okay. So think of the e-collar as the top of the collar. So when you go out for your walks and stuff, Brody's going to be wearing it. But when you're doing your training and you're reinforcing it, you're not always using it. Okay. In the beginning, you're going to be using it a lot because you're teaching. But once he learns the concept and that cop on the collar is on, you're going to see, wow, we put the collar on, he's great, right? So if he's a great dog inside the house, you don't need it. If you're going to go to a restaurant patio, pop it on, but you're not using it the entire time. You're going to the training, okay? It's practice just keeps it in check. Yeah. So this has nothing to do with my skills as a trainer. It has nothing to do with your the time that you put into it. It's just opportunistic behavior. Okay. Also, you can't kind of account for life. You know, things happen, especially when dogs are off leash. Like I've had dogs get spooked by fireworks. Had a dog here in Lincoln Park. The owner was walking with him off leash, turned around, and then it spooked a coyote out the brush. So then he was face to face with a coyote. I had another dog chase a squirrel, start running towards the street. Same dog actually here at this park. Her and another dog went after a tennis ball at the same time, triggered a dog fight. The dog was able to, the owner's able to pull the dog out because she had their e-collar. You know, so these are things that you can't account for, and that's what I train for. I train for those moments that I hope never happen, but if they do, you're prepared for it. Okay.
One thing that's maybe a step beyond, it's 10-year-old wheels. I think it's scary. It's anything with wheels. So it's like rollerbladers, skateboards, goes nuts. Runs away as hard as you can pull the cart and get away from it.
Gotcha.
Even like the rolling carts that the
shopping
barrier.
Oh, okay.
Right,
Yeah.
so on the sidewalks. If he even sees one of those, it's gone.
Gotcha.
And that may be a step ahead.
No, it's actually, so the way we'd approach that is I can't make him like those things, but we can get him to contain. Okay, so let's say, so I train the auto sit for the heel, right? So I come to a stop the auto sit, I shorten my leash, whatever, and I see bikers or something going by that I know is going to trigger him. A lot of times, just the discipline of the collar will resolve that issue. Okay, because it settles. See how he's just nonstop here? That's part of the reason why he has issues with that stuff. Okay, once you see him calm down, he's not constantly stimulated. That it's easier to handle that stressor. It's easier to handle that stressor. Otherwise, if it doesn't resolve that issue, it's actually a simple thing to address with the e-collar. Okay, and we can work on, because we don't want him ever to run away. If anything, we want him to run to you. So if you try to book it, what you'd see is what we condition him to do is to run to you, and he'd hug against you, but he's still scared of it. I can't make him like it. Okay? Yeah, but we can at least prevent him from running away. Okay? And yeah, that's simple stuff. E-collar makes things very simple. Once you start using it, it's going to be like, wow, this is...
Can we buy it through you?
You get it through Amazon. Yeah, because Amazon undercuts everybody, so I just stopped carrying it. We'd send you the model that I recommend for him is for 70-pound dogs and under, and he's at 50 pounds, right? Yeah. It's a 3/4 mile range, so plenty of range for the standard family pass. Fully waterproof, both the collar and the transmitter.
And it goes right here, right? On the back of the neck.
It goes, we put it here.
Put it there.
Yeah, so up here, behind the neck tends to be too sensitive. We do either side of the throat. Typically this high, we don't really do the base, because the base tends to be a little bit more resilient. So this is more sensitive, so you get more with less power. Okay. The collar runs about $287 with tax on Amazon. It's a little bit cheaper. I think they run like $260 something. Comes with a year warranty. I think you can also get an extended warranty on Amazon. The most common thing that I see is that because it's a rechargeable lithium battery, much like your phone, as the battery dies out after a couple of years, that you go on the website, $15, $20, you buy a new one, you open it up, you replace it, and it's good as new. Okay. I've had mine for 8 years, no issues. So it's an investment, but it'll last you a really long time.
And will you send us the one that you recommend?
Yes, Maria will send you all the information. And then what I do suggest is once you're confirmed, I'll send you some videos to educate you on the collar, how to fit it, all that stuff. You'd want to watch that before the class. It'll prep you so we can just hop right into training. I do suggest that you test out your collar prior because it is electrical, so that sometimes they send a dud where like it'll. So you can go in increments of 1, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 127. Is sometimes the dial will be overly sensitive, and you'll go from like 1 to 30, like a tiny little movement. Then you want to get that exchange and get a correct one. But this way you don't show up and then you have a lemon or whatever, because that does happen. So this way we don't waste the class or anything like that. Other questions?
Do you do one class a week or?
Yes, 1 class a week for an hour. We've been working here. If you have to travel or anything like that, you just let Maria know, and then she'll handle the scheduling stuff. The way we do it is if you do the 6 classes and you pick a time with Maria, like let's say, for example, this was open. So Saturday at 1 to 2, whatever, is your time for 7 weeks. Okay, so it's 6 weeks plus 1. In case you get sick or something like that, we understand. But no one can take that time from you. Okay, but if you cancel or reschedule, like let's say 3 times, by the time you hit your 7th week, you have classes left over, but you used up your priority. Okay, so my schedule, especially on the weekends, gets really busy. Is to keep it flowing. Maria will tell you like, hey, you used up your priority, you still have your classes. These are other times we have available. If we have someone we need to book. If no one's asking for the time, then we just click on the time slot. You're perfectly fine. But Maria would handle all that stuff for you.
She's got travel coming up.
Try to do it.
What would happen if one of us was only able to make it?
That's fine. That's fine. I mean, we record it too. Oh, yeah, you didn't hear for that part. Yeah. So we've been recording all our training sessions and consultations because of COVID. 1, to educate people, but 2, because it's verbal instruction, the biggest question we got, because I went from 30, 40 clients to 0 when COVID hit, right? And I knew I could train the dogs without touching them. It's just I needed proof. So finally we had a client that was like so frustrated with their dog that they were my first post-COVID client. And then sure enough, it was all verbal instruction, they got it. So then they did a testimonial video, and then I wish I would have recorded the sessions though, because it was like night and day. And then after that, we just started getting a flood of clients, and we started recording everything. So we just tell people, if you want proof, just like we have like hundreds of videos of just uncut, unedited, beginning to end training sessions.
Has it changed? Do you think you'll go back to or we keep it where it's no touch?
Yeah.
Post-COVID, is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's working better because you're learning everything. So when people need the obedience to be absolutely functional, it's in an emergency setting. Okay? So like, the more you do the remote, when people panic, they tend to go for the dog or the leash. Okay? But since you're doing the remote so much, once you get comfortable with it, your first instinct would actually be go to the remote. Okay? But it's not uncommon for a client the first time to go for the dog. And I'll tell them, jump to your remote, because in real life, when you're in an absolute need to function or make it work, it's going to be the remote. And if you're spending too much time chasing your dog,
So that's going to take me some time just to think about, all of a sudden start running that way, and trying to go this way to get people with the remote or whatever.
Right. That's why it's on your person, right? It comes with a lanyard. People put it on their belt. So like mine, I used to put a carabiner and be on my belt loop or whatever. When you're in the setting like this, right? Like that's when you have it. That's when you're aware and stuff. With training, the stuff that a dog would typically chase after, like a squirrel or something, that stuff tends to go away just through discipline. It's really that just unknown variable of someone set off a random firework. And that happened to me with a client at a Skinner Park, which is off the West Loop. We were training, and I just saw the firework go in the sky, and I started looking and scouting, so I'm like, somebody's dog is going to run away.
Yeah.
And it blew up, and all the dogs just scattered. Thankfully, nobody ran away, but my client's dog went to scatter, and then he hit the remote, and the dog ran straight back to him. Okay? So, like, stuff like that. Otherwise, it's super simple. If you're curious as to how it looks, I always tell people go to my YouTube channel. And lesson 1s are always the great one, because the dog doesn't know anything, the human doesn't know anything, and you can see the before and after, like within the session, just the progress of the craziness that it was in the beginning to the ending. And then the beginning of a class 2, and then you see like, holy crap, like it's stuck, and like the owner has very good control. Okay?
As far as classes, is weather changing anything? thing, or you mean?
Yeah, so to try to keep things from pushing back, I have a facility in Logan Square. It's a 13,000 square foot facility, and I have a garage that you would just simply drive into, and you just walk in, and it's a 6,000 square foot open space. So then you don't need to walk through doorways and stuff like that. This way you can continue training, not having to worry about the weather and stuff. If for whatever reason that's not possible, it's not a big deal. We just push back the reschedule. Because I know once fall hits and then the winter hits, I'm trying to think how am I going to handle that. But we've had a few clients that even though they met us at the facility, because of the methods and how I train, it still carried over into a real world environment. So that's how I mean, if it's not applicable here, there's no point in teaching it. Okay? Other questions?
Yeah, ready to try it out.
Okay, so Maria will get in contact with you. She'll send you the information for the make and model for the collar. She'll reiterate. So the program, the 6-week program, is $825. Part of your consultation fee does get credit towards that. And then the cost of the collar, again, on Amazon, the most you're probably going to pay for is about $287. Probably going to be a little bit cheaper than that. Other than that, leash walking, recall, the behavior stuff you mentioned, and your stationary control shouldn't be an issue within that time frame.
And we can extend.
Yeah, you can extend if you like. Yeah, if you like, holy crap, you want more control?
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah. A lot.
Let's see how far we can push
Yeah.
this.
So it's most people when they come in, because either if they've had other trainers or just what they think the dog is capable of, they're ceiling is super low.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, we're gonna go way past that.
We just wanted to
That's
sit.
Yeah. And yeah, by all means, feel free to watch those videos. That's what we put them up there for, so people can either educate themselves or just know okay, cool, this is gonna work. Okay. You just have to do the homework. Okay. Anything else?
I don't think so, no.
All right. It was a pleasure meeting you guys. If you have any questions, let us know. I think today's Maria's day off, so she may get back to you tomorrow. But otherwise, she will get in contact.
Cool.
Okay. Awesome.
And we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much. Take
Yeah,
care.
thank you.
Enjoy your weekend.